All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Coming to you live from Georgia, from one of the founders of Gridiron AI, Andy. It's his birthday, so I'm down here in Georgia, both working and hanging out with him. So shout out to Andy. I'm sure he'll listen to this at some point. He's getting some work done right now. But I'm here with Rob. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good, Nick. Just back to the grind as usual. It's been a tough couple main slate weeks for me. I've been staying afloat with the showdowns. Let's see if we can put together some good info here and get back in the green for those Sunday afternoons.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm on a bit of a cold streak. I think that's partially due to I've been pretty busy, been traveling, but still running the optimals, still getting them out there. And unfortunately, they haven't been hitting as well as they have been historically. But that'll happen. Variance is a very real thing when it comes to NFL football. But the player pool is live. Gonna post it on Instagram tomorrow at some point, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, we're gonna dive right in. You and I kind of both running separate experiments this week. We do think that early on in our process, we're trying to kind of find something that's unique and also profitable. So every week we kind of try and tweak something a little bit new. So peek behind the curtain. This week I'm aggregating a lot of projection sources, and I'm going to look at the variation between those sources. And sometimes, like for example, Jared Goff, everybody's going to project him for right around, like, I don't know, 15 to 17 points, right? Not a whole lot of variation between the sources that I'm aggregating. However, a player like a good example is Tony Pollard this week. Like, was Zeke going to be out? Was he not going to be out? He is doubtful to play on Sunday. So I do anticipate that the variation in those projections will come down because people are going to know that Tony Pollard's the guy. He's going to be very popular. So looking at instances, a good example is sometimes it's like real the best word for it I can think of is granular. Like, who's the wide receiver 3 for the Saints? Is it Traquan Smith or Marquez Callaway? Actually wide receiver 2, because both Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas will be out. But figuring out who the field thinks is going to be that second wide receiver behind Chris Olave, what the salary on DraftKings says will be the second wide receiver, what our projections say, all of those things, I think you can find some inefficiencies, right? And if you find those inefficiencies, we can pull some levers in the projections and our optimizers to make sure that we get more of the player that we think will be the beneficiary of Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry being out. So that's just one example. It's going to take a little bit more time, research and whatnot, but I'm pretty confident that if it's done well and it's done in a sound scientific way, that we'll be landing on plays where there's uncertainty and we are taking a stand and we're on the right side of it. So that's kind of where I'm at. It kind of sounds complicated, but it's really like I can boil it down to one phrase. I'm going to call it being aggressive uncertainty. So where people are uncertain, we want to be aggressive and we want to be intentional about the stances we take. We don't want to split the difference, because that's how you end up in the middle of the pack instead of up there at the top. So that's what I'm working on this week, and probably for the next few weeks, kind of testing that out. You had a different idea when I brought this idea up to you. So go ahead and walk us through kind of maybe something you're going to try this week.
Yeah, so in my optimization process, there's two ways that you can run optimal lineups. You can do it with just your median projections, or you can configure your optimizer to kind of tune each player's projection every time you're generating a lineup. And the way you do that is you set a configuration setting in the optimizer um, to tune it by a certain percent. For example, you might adjust a player's projections by somewhere between 0 and 15%. But the fact is that each player has a different amount of volatility associated with them. So it might not be practical to just assign every player a variance of 12% or 15%. So instead, what you can do is you can assign each player their own their own variance metrics. Okay, so for example, maybe someone like let's just say Jamar Chase. Let's say over his last games, 90% of the time his variance is 20% or higher when you compare his projection to what he actually scored. So I might set the minimum variance adjustment for him when I'm running the lineup to 20%. So in this case, we're kind of taking into account each player's volatility when we're considering adjusting their points for each optimal lineup we're creating. You do that 10,000 times, and then you go back and look at, okay, which players are coming up the most based on how volatile they are, what they're projected, and what they might do this week. So that's something I haven't really tried yet. It's a little bit of a complicated process. Um, sometimes it's just easier to just stick with the median projection, but like Nick was saying, sometimes it's good to target uncertainty and get some leverage on the field. So that's what I'm going to try and do this week, is look at each player's variance individually. Nick, you're on mute.
There we go. That's the first time that's happened this season. So shout out to us. But I will say that volatility is going to be a function of that median projection. And what I mean by that is, if Marquise Brown, we're bringing up players that unfortunately are going to be out for a while. Jamar Chase is going to be on the shelf for 4 to 6 weeks with a hip injury. Marquise Brown, of course, has been on the shelf for a while with, I believe, a foot injury. But Marquise Brown is a player that has a high ADOT. He's running down the field, and some days he's going to hit big, and some days he's going to miss those deep air balls, and those will be tough. Those will be tough days for him, but it's going to level out. His median projection will kind of fluctuate with that. But I do think there's some merit with such small sample sizes. That's the key thing here. Like, if we were doing NBA or NHL, we probably wouldn't play around with volatility stuff this much. But because the sample sizes are so small, we do want to take some career fluctuation into account and apply it to the current season and the current projection. So I'm interested to see how you do with that. I'm also interested to see how this whole standard deviation volatility thing I'm doing works out among a wide range of projection sources that we're using. So yeah, so without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's give some people some plays. We're going to go position by position here, starting with quarterback. I'll lead off. And the elephant in the room, or rather the Ellinger in the room, is we have a $4,000 quarterback, Sam Ellinger, who likes to run the ball, who had a good preseason, who the owner, Jim Irsay, basically said Matt Ryan's done because he was having one of the worst quarterback seasons we've seen of late. He's injured, which I think we might see Tom Brady be injured here pretty soon. I'm making air quotes for those that are just listening. But yeah, Sam Ellinger did not make my player pool. But he did, however, make your pool in a big way. So talk me through why you're into Sam Ellinger this week, and how he fits into the slate context as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously very risky, right? Because we've never seen him play in a regular season game, but it's his price point. It's $4,000 is ridiculous for a starting quarterback. You'll never see that that low. And at $4,000, I mean, his upside score is 22 points. So when I say upside score, based on a player's position and salary, what score do they need to end up in the $1 million lineup historically? And 22 points, that's completely viable for any starting quarterback on any given week, especially for a quarterback who supposedly likes to run the ball. The Colts are favored in this game by 3 points. The over-under is only at about 40 points, giving the Colts projected score of 21.225 points. So, I mean, if you put in Sam Ellinger in your lineup, you can, it allows you to do some pretty heavy stacks at some higher priced players, thinking, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill. There are ways with Sam Ellinger in the quarterback position that you can have two of those guys in your lineup. And if he even goes to 12 points and gets triple his value at $4,000, you're fine. You are still very much in the mix. So I love Sam Ellinger this week just because we don't have to see him really perform that well to get his worth at $4,000. So that's why he is definitely one of my top options this week. If he does go for 15 to 20 points, he's 100% is going to be in the Millionaire Maker lineup this week. So I'd have him in both cash and GPPs this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ran a preliminary optimal. Of course, I'm going to update that and post that on Sunday for everybody. But I mean, he's in, like, I didn't even need to run it. I knew he was going to show up just because you don't get quarterbacks that cheap. So he's definitely a cash play for me. I think he's a fade in GPPs because, like I said, I just think that there's a couple paths to him failing. The Colts, in the preseason, Sam Ellinger got 137 preseason snaps, roughly 2 full games worth. Mind you, these are against second, third team defenses. That's one thing to keep in mind with these preseason stats. But he did have a rushing line of 17, 126, and 1. So 17 attempts, 126 yards, and 1 touchdown. And this is about 2 games worth of snaps, a little more actually. He completed 75% of his passes. He went 45 of 60. So those are solid preseason numbers. I mean, you'd rather see that than him not do well in the preseason. That's why he's got some buzz. But again, this is a quarterback that played for Texas. We had 4 years of tape on him, and he went in the 6th round, I believe. So NFL coaches saw enough that they passed on him plenty in the draft. And typically 6th-round QBs, not named Tom Brady, who was a 7th-round QB, don't pan out in the NFL. So that doesn't mean to say he can't have a good game this week. I don't have it accessible here because, like I said, he's not in the pool. Who does Ellinger play this week?
Playing the Commanders, and they've been pretty weak against quarterbacks this year. They've been averaging about 2 touchdowns per game, pass touchdowns per game allowed. But you know, like I said, at $4,000, even if he gets 1 passing touchdown and 100 yards, it's that's probably enough to keep you in the mix in most tournaments or cash games.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I mean, like, the Commanders don't scare me. Like, that's one thing. I think if he was going up against the 49ers or another stout defense, his ownership would not be quite as high. Like, he's projected to be about 20% owned, which that's really high for a quarterback. Typically, quarterback ownership is pretty flat. Like, high ownership for a quarterback is 14, 15%. So a lot of people are going to want to plug him in and play a lot of studs, which that's a fun way to play DFS. One thing that like also bothers me a little bit about him for tournaments is if you do that cheap quarterback, the rest of your lineup, you might not have all chalky players, but your structure is going to be chalky. So you're more likely to land on a lineup that's a little bit more popular as a whole. Whereas if you pay up for a quarterback or maybe go mid-tier quarterback, and that's one easy way to get different. And I'm a little bit more of a game theorist than some other players. So I'm looking for ways to get different. And I think an easy way to get different is to fade the rookie QB that we're not sure how good he is and get different elsewhere. So other than Ellinger, who else are you gravitating towards in tournaments?
Yeah, so this is definitely a week where I'm paying down for quarterback. I mean, it's such a big drop off from the top. You get Jalen Hurts at 8,300, then you drop $800 to Kyler Murray at 7,500, and then you drop $900 to Dak Prescott at 6,600. So the guys at the top are very far away from the top. So I'm kind of interested in the mid tier guys this week in that kind of 58 to 6,200 range. Tua Tagovailoa going to be very chalky this week against that Detroit defense. I think it's the highest over under on the slate at 51.5. Miami has a 27.5 projected team score. I mean, this Lions defense has been awful this year. They've just been lighting it up. And, Tua has all those weapons. He's in a smash spot against Detroit. The only thing that's deterring from me from him is his chalkiness in tournaments. But, I think this is one of those weeks where you might be able to just plug and chug Tua and try and get different elsewhere. Someone else is Kirk Cousins at 6,100 against Arizona. That's another game that's expected to be high scoring at over-under set right now at 49. And the Vikings are favored actually by 3.5 points. And the Cardinals have kind of struggled against the pass this year. So I think it could be a good opportunity for him. He hasn't really had a ceiling yet this year. One of those 3 or 4 touchdown pass games. So this one gets competitive with the Cardinals, and shoots out. It could be a good game for Kirk Cousins. So
Yeah.
those are kind of those 2 mid-tier options that I like this week if I'm going off of Sam Ellinger.
Yeah, I'm definitely on both of those. I'm a slightly overweight on Tua here. Like the optimal exposure is 16%. He's projected to be about 14%. So basically in line with the field on Tua. And for all the reasons you said, the Lions defense is an absolute sieve, giving up plenty of air yards after catch, which is Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle's bread and butter. People are going to love to double stack that game up because we know where the ball is going. I think if you do want to play Tua and want to get different, Mike Gesicki's getting more involved. He's definitely an option in the red zone for them. And I think it's taken him a while to kind of get in Mike. well, I always say Mike McGlinchey, but that's the 49ers coach. What's his name in Dolphins?
Like McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel. There it is. So Mike McDaniel, I think, has warmed up to Gesicki as a weapon in the red zone a little bit more, which is good. So that would be one way to stack Tua this week, which I do think stacking is like a very good idea. Recently, I think stacking has kind of jumped the shark a little bit, but on DraftKings, it makes sense to do some double stacks this week with the way the slate's playing out. So I do like Tua. I do like Kirk Cousins for sure. He's actually the top option for me. He's going to be about 10% owned or so. So not super sneaky, but I do think stacking him with Justin Jefferson is a great idea this week. And here's a fun tidbit. I believe Adam Thielen is approaching a record for the Vikings for touchdowns. So I think he's going to get a few looks in the red zone, like career record. I did see on Twitter, people were joking about Adam Thielen is the locker room barista and has been bringing Kirk Cousins coffees every day. So I think there's some gamesmanship there about like, hey, buddy, I'm approaching a record, so maybe look my way in the red zone, which that might be complete narrative, like ignore it. But I mean, I think someone of Adam Thielen's age needs all the help he can get. And if he's going to get that first look in the red zone, it could be it could be an Adam Thielen week, and it might be the last Adam Thielen week we ever get. I just think we're approaching the end of his career as an option in fantasy football. You mentioned Tua in that game having a high over under. We've seen the Lions show up. I think they're getting healthier. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to play. He's questionable, but I do think that he is going to play this week. TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, like they're going to be back at full power, and they were just slinging the ball around the yard early in the season when they had all their weapons. So Jared Goff is not projected to be nearly as popular as Tua, and you can get a piece of that game, stack it up just the same way, but just sub in Goff instead of Tua, save yourself some salary, save yourself some ownership, some chalk, and really benefit from that game environment. A couple other off the wall options. Andy Dalton is popping for me, which I want to vomit, but the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders defense has been giving up a lot of pass yards per attempt. Out of the 6 quarterbacks that are in the pool, Andy Dalton seems to have the best matchup in terms of passer rating allowed, pass attempts, air yards, all these things, and we can stack him up with Chris Olave, who I love this week. Are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% on that as well.
Are we? Oh, some technical difficulties.
Yeah, are we good now?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I think I just had a little bit of Wi-Fi issue, but I'm getting Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket. Are you getting any of him, or we fading him this week?
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's definitely on my radar as well. That Raiders defense, as you pointed out, has been pretty bad against quarterbacks this year. They're allowing like a 102 passer rating to quarterbacks on average this season. Their defense hasn't really been getting to the quarterback. They're only averaging about a sack and a half per game. And we saw, Andy Dalton can put up yards, especially if he's trailing. The Raiders are probably the better team overall. You'd expect they should be leading, or at the very least, we should expect a positive game script. I think actually the Saints are only about 1 point underdogs right now. So at an over-under 50, right around 50 points, it should be a good game script for Andy Dalton. And at 5,500, again, he doesn't have to have a phenomenal game to pay off. If he gets you 18 to 20 points, that's probably plenty to keep you in the mix in most tournaments. Like you said, you can stack him with Olave. That's a pretty affordable stack. If you wanted to get different with Alvin Kamara, I don't think he's going to be super popular this week. But yeah, I like a lot of options and a lot of lineup building for Andy Dalton this week.
Yeah, and on the other side too, Derek Carr is popping up for me. Like you said, over a 50-point over/under, it's not surprising. What is surprising is both quarterbacks doesn't look like they're going to be very popular. Both under 5% owned. Projected, I mean, that might change as the weekend goes on and people start to look for ways to get different from this Lions Dolphins game. But yeah, Davante Adams was out of practice a few days this week due to an illness. He was back at practice today, so it seems like he's going to be okay. I would say he's got plenty of time to kind of get fluids and get better. If I don't know if it was flu or what it was, but expect Davante Adams, and Darren Waller looks like he's trending towards playing as well. So again, a full complement of weapons for Derek Carr. And yeah, you're going to see some Foster Moreau pop up in some projections, but like I said, keep an eye on Darren Waller's status when you're looking for people to stack Derek Carr with, for sure. Speaking of which, we got one more quarterback here, and no one wants to play this guy. It's really sad. Playing San Francisco, Matt Stafford and the Rams. I will say he's getting Van Jefferson back, and I just saw a report that his role should be full go. He's a field stretcher for them, which gives me pause. One, because their offensive line is so bad, and part of the reason why Allen Robinson hasn't been doing so well this year is just there's not enough time to get him the ball downfield. I do trust Sean McVay, though, and I think that he will figure out a way to get it done. And I do think that Van Jefferson is more important to this offense than people like to give him credit for. So I do like Matthew Stafford as like an absolute YOLO shot in a few lineups if I'm playing 20 or 150. How do you feel about Matt Stafford and the Rams this week in general against a really good San Francisco defense?
I'm 100% fading Matt Stafford. I have no interest in him this week. That offensive line for the Rams has been putrid. And obviously, that defense for the 49ers has been phenomenal. Of course, they didn't have the best game against Patrick Mahomes last week, but a lot of defenses don't have great games against Patrick Mahomes. That 49ers defense, I mean, they've been getting to the quarterback. I mean, the Rams have been allowing like 4 sacks per game. Matt Stafford's been getting hit between 7 and 8 times per game this season. That's right at the bottom of the league. So when you're talking about, protection for the quarterback there, it's been as ugly as it gets for him. And I think it could be a really ugly week for that Rams offense. And actually, I might be even inclined to pay up for whatever San Francisco's defense is this week. So I'm a little bit on the other side of the fence for you. I think most might agree. So I think Matt Stafford, at the very least, you got a good contrarian play there. I have him under 2% owned. So, hey, if that offensive line puts it together for one game and Matt Stafford goes off, you're going to get some leverage there.
Yeah, I mean, as a raw play, like just thinking about like who the best plays, like he's not a good play. But the fact that he's popping up in the optimal player pool, like that's significant to me. I think his price has come down, his ownership has come down, where it might offset some of that risk a little bit. And the reward being that if he throws 2-3 touchdowns at low ownership in a game, second division game of the year between these two, which are typically lower scoring, so that's a ding against him. But I mean, stacking him up with Cooper Kupp, he's still projecting well. Ownership's not going to get out of hand with him because his price is pretty high. I think there's a path to him paying off, and if you hit elsewhere, he could find his way in some pretty high scoring lineups. Again, not something I'm going to play a ton. I'm not going to go on my way to slot him in, but I'm not gonna bump him out of the player pool manually or anything like that. So those are all the plays that I have. And like I said, I'll post these. And if anything changes, you'll see that reflected in the post that goes live tomorrow. But other than Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Tua, Andy Dalton, Derek Carr, and Matt Stafford, is there anyone else you're targeting this week?
There's not, but I would like to remind everyone that the new Call of Duty, it just came out. So I think that means we have to fade Kyler Murray because he's just going to be holed up, just marking people probably online. So
not getting a lick of sleep,
That's not good. His performance dropped off pretty substantially when it came out last year. So, who knows? But I'll probably be fading him for that reason. Maybe for the rest of the season.
I don't know though. I do think that it's interesting. He did the offense seemed to really miss DeAndre Hopkins, so I think he adds an element, and I think he opens things up for the offense as a whole. I don't know that I'll fade him because of the Call of Duty narrative, but he's not showing up for me in the player pool, and I probably won't go out of my way. They are playing this week. They are playing against. I do have DeAndre Hopkins in the pool, I believe. Yeah, so they're playing Minnesota. So like I said, I like Kirk Cousins. I like Justin Jefferson this week. So DeAndre Hopkins as the bring back is probably how I want to get exposed to that Arizona offense, not necessarily playing Kyler Murray. But we'll see how the projections evolve over the weekend, how ownership evolves over the weekend. But without spending too much time on quarterback, which I'll be honest with you, kind of a gross week for quarterback. We don't really have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson played yesterday. Tom Brady, who's not really a target in fantasy right now. You know what? Love is dead, by the way. Divorce papers filed today. How are you feeling about that? That's probably pretty close to home for you, huh?
Yeah, I just I refuse to believe it. I mean, I just keep thinking that they're gonna work it out. I mean, this is Tom Rizal here. This is America's couple.
America's couple, right? It's New England's couple, it's Boston's couple, it's America's couple. Figure it out, you two. Come on. But yeah, let's move on to running back before we keep talking about two people we don't know's love life. That's none of our business. Please respect their privacy during this time, people. Number one option for me at running back. Not going to sneak this guy by anybody anymore, but Josh Jacobs is just absolutely dominating. Josh McDaniels' favorite offensive weapon. The whole offense revolves around Josh Jacobs, and like I said, this New Orleans Las Vegas game is projected to shoot out a little bit, and Josh Jacobs is probably going to be a big part of that. Are you seeing a lot of Josh Jacobs in your player pool?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the over under that game, I love the Raiders, especially because it seems like Derek Carr. It seems like it's very difficult for him to throw more than two touchdown passes. I mean, you look at his player prop on a week to week; it's usually 1.5 for touchdown passes. So I mean, if the Raiders are projected to score, that many points, that means they're projected at what 25, right around 25 points. More likely than not, at least one or two of those is going to come on the ground, and Jacobs has just been smashing it the last few weeks, especially. Kind of the only thing that would deter me from him is just how hot he has been. You think he's going to come back down to earth eventually, but I don't know if this is the week that's going to happen. You can run the ball against the Saints defense. They've been allowing 4.7 yards per carry this year. Not at the bottom of the league, but that's again pretty manageable for a guy like Josh Jacobs. So yeah, I definitely like him a lot this week. He's a little bit lower owned than some of the other big dogs in the slate. So yeah, I mean, fire him up for me as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said the New Orleans. The narrative out there is that New Orleans is what we call like a pass funnel. Their run D has been stout, but I think recently, I mean, they got kind of gashed by Eno Benjamin and Keontae Ingram. So I mean, with that in mind, like Josh Jacobs can certainly have a good game. And the thing is I don't know what to think about that because it depends. Like I think a lot of people are going to play Josh Jacobs, so he might actually be a good fade in tournaments. But I don't know that you can fade that guy right now. He's absolutely on fire. Another running back that's going to be chalky this week is Tony Pollard. We got the news today that Zeke is most likely going to be out. He's doubtful. Typically, we don't see players that are doubtful play on Sundays. If it's going to happen, a Jerry Jones owned team will probably be it. I saw another tweet that we'll see how he looks tomorrow. So don't count Ezekiel Elliott all the way out yet. But it should be a Tony Pollard week. He's going to be super popular. The Dallas is going to be playing against Dallas is playing Chicago. Again, not a defense we're scared of. How do you feel about Pollard this week?
Yeah, so I mean, I was kind of following the injury news. I hadn't heard that Zeke was doubtful, but yeah, I love that this week, especially because it seems like a lot of the top running backs this week have finally started to come up to where their salary should be. You're not getting any of these guys at like 58, 6,200 that we were a couple weeks ago. You're going to be paying up for points at running back, so you got to make sure that you're choosing wisely. But Tony Pollard coming in at 6,100 and probably getting the bulk of the work is about probably the best value you're going to get for volume this week. And we've seen what Tony Pollard has done in the past when Zeke is not active. There hasn't been that many games, but man, I remember a couple years ago, Zeke went down and I had Tony Pollard stashed in one of my season-long lineups for 15 weeks, and he goes in and he goes off, and I win a championship. So yeah, he's got a soft spot for me in my heart right now, and love him at 6,100 against the Bears this week if Zeke in fact does not play.
Yeah, we also have some other chalky options. Just in general, the player pool that I'm on is just a lot of chalk. I'm gonna have to take another look at that just because the everybody seems really sure about what running backs they want to play this week. So the really popular running backs are Tony Pollard, Kenneth Walker, Dameon Pierce, Ramondre Stevenson, and to a lesser extent, Raheem Mostert. These are all like kind of similar backs to me. Like they're playing well. They're young. They're absolutely punishing people on defenses, and people are just riding the wave. I don't think all of them get there. I mean, it's highly unlikely that all of them meet their salary expectation. So I don't think you can fade all of them. I don't think that's wise, but picking your spots, getting a little different. Another area of uncertainty that I'm targeting this week, and I don't know if it's going to be uncertain by the time Sunday rolls around, is Chuba Hubbard and Donta Foreman. It does look like Chuba Hubbard is going to be out, which means that we need to fire up Donta Foreman. So some of that ownership is going to find its way to Donta Foreman because he's going to be a cheap option that should project really, really well. So that may pull some ownership off guys like Kenneth Walker, Damian Pierce, Ramondre Stevenson, etc. But in general, like before the Chuba Hubbard news, I'm not sure if he actually is declared out yet. I don't think he has been. Are you seeing any of the Carolina backs pop up for you?
They haven't been for me, but a lot of my projections are based on recent performance, and because Christian McCaffrey has been the guy, they obviously haven't been putting up points lately. So they're kind of someone, they're kind of a couple of guys that you'd have to look at and plug in. And I think one of them is questionable this week, right? Is it Chuba Hubbard who's questionable? So I mean,
Yeah, he's not looking like he's going to play.
yeah, so I mean, you absolutely have to have Dante Foreman in the mix again. Looking for value this week. Yeah, Dante Foreman or Tony Pollard. Yeah, and against Atlanta, who you can run the ball against them. Definitely something to keep an eye on. If Chuba Hubbard doesn't play, I'd be all over that.
Yeah, another play I really like that's kind of a I know better play is and this is purely based off of uncertainty. Like people aren't really sure how to project Christian McCaffrey with his new team, San Francisco. So right now I have him as a high projection of 21 points and a low projection of 15. Christian McCaffrey doesn't get projected at 15 points. It's just he's a more explosive player than that. If no one's going to play him, I'm going to try and figure out a way to get up to him, pay down at quarterback if I have to. Playing Christian McCaffrey with maybe one of these low price, like a Donta Foreman, seems like a good way to structure your team and get away from some of the chalk. That may come back to bite me because Kenneth Walker is going to be awesome. Damian Pierce is going to be awesome. So just something I'm thinking about. Let's get back to the players that are actually in the pool instead of trying to galaxy brain some of this stuff. But other than Josh Jacobs, I have your boy Ramondre Stevenson. So he's definitely showing up for you, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have him right up there at the top of my list. I'm not sure if Damian Harris, I haven't really heard kind of in the grapevine if he's still dealing with an injury. We saw him come in for a few series last week on Monday night, and then it was Ramondre Stevenson show after that. I think at the very least.
Wait a second. Ladies and gentlemen, we've made it. We got a porn bot. All right. So I don't know how to get rid of it. I'm going to put that user in timeout. All right. Okay. None of that. Get out of here. All right. Continue. Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're good. It was the Ramondre Stevenson show last Monday night. So I don't know if Damian Harris is healthy or not. But even if he is, I mean, it looks like Stevenson is getting most of the passing down work. I'm a little nervous about this Patriots team and the offense, which would be the only thing deterring me from playing him. But the Jets too haven't been too bad against the run. They're only averaging about 4 yards per attempt allowed, which is pretty solid. That's closer to the top than the bottom of the league. So I mean, and he is 6,400. But you're getting good value for the amount of usage he's going to get. But the Patriots aren't really projected to score a lot of points this week. So there's other guys I like better, but his ownership is pretty high too. But it could be a good option. I'm not sure if I'm in love with it as much as some of the other players, but in terms of value at 6,400, he's up there close to the top.
And we just got some news rolling in. Actually, right when the show began, Deebo Samuel is out, and I point that one out. We got a flurry of news here. Deebo Samuel is out for Sunday, officially ruled out. So again, that will probably draw a little bit more ownership towards CMC. Maybe not though, because he's tough to fit in. I'm going to be playing. I'm going to be jamming Christian McCaffrey in this week. I just want to be ahead of it. People aren't going to be into it because they're not sure what he's going to look like on this new team. But with Deebo Samuel out, I could see him kind of gobbling up some of that usage. And I really, really like playing CMC this week. CMC is going to win someone $1 million this season. It's just what he does. So Josh Jacobs, Ramondre Stevenson, Tony Pollard, Raheem Mostert, again, someone I was fading preseason. Actually, not as much as others, but people don't like to play Raheem Mostert because he's injury prone. It does seem like he's going to be popular this week. Again, against the Detroit defense that can't stop anybody. They have Aiden Hutchinson who can get after the quarterback, but outside of that, not really much they can do on the defensive side of the ball. So I really like Raheem Mostert. He's been playing well. He looks good. He's still fast. It's just a matter of staying healthy. How do you feel about Raheem Mostert this week? And do you have anything on him that excites you?
Yeah, yeah, I love Raheem Mostert this week. He's actually probably one of my favorite plays in the entire slate at 5,900 in that potentially big scoring game. And it allows you to stack Tua with maybe Tyreek Hill or even Jalen Waddle. And at 5,900, you're not spending too much. The Lions have been just as bad against the run as they've been against the pass. They've been allowing 128 yards per game to top running backs this season. They're averaging 1.5 rushing touchdowns allowed on the ground. And 5.5 yards per carry allowed too. So I mean, there's a lot of stats there to justify playing Raheem Mostert this week. This is a guy that's got big playability, can break off huge runs. And he hasn't really had that game yet this season. He hasn't had that ceiling game. So this looks like a good opportunity for it. And again, at 5,900, he doesn't have to have a monster game, but I like his monster game potential this week. And I like the idea of stacking him with Tua and Tyreek Hill, and hey, maybe even a triple stack with Jalen Waddle if you wanted to get really different. But he's one of my favorite running back plays this week.
Yeah, and then kind of moving up a little bit in salary, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry round out the player pool for me at running back. Obviously, Saquon Barkley's playing the Seahawks, who, again, not scaring anybody on defense. Derrick Henry plays Houston, which, again, he should run all over them. He has his entire career. Two guys that you have to pay up for. Again, it does seem like people are going to be on them. So I'm on a lot of chalk at running back this week, so I'm probably going to have to manually kind of get different there in some way. But like I said, Saquon Barkley against Seattle, Derrick Henry against Houston. Are you getting them at all, or is there another high-priced running back you like this week?
I like both those options, especially Derrick Henry. It's starting to become Derrick Henry season. Late in the season, we see these defensive backs. They've been taking too many hits, and no one wants to tackle Derrick Henry coming out of the backfield. When it starts to get to October, November, that's when he starts to have his huge games. He hasn't had that monster game yet either, and he's got a good opportunity here against a Texans run defense that has also been underwhelming. They've been giving up a lot of yards on the ground. They've been giving up, 1 or 2 touchdowns on the ground per game. They're allowing 5.37 yards per rush attempt. Monster game here potential for Derrick Henry if you're willing to pay up 8,400. With a lot of cheap quarterbacks this week, this is probably a week to pay up at running back for sure. So I like Derrick Henry a lot. Some other guys I like getting on the kind of, we want to jump to kind of lower owned. Miles Sanders is going under 5% owned right now, 6,600. What do you think of Miles Sanders this week? Because I like him in a game where the Eagles are projected to score 27 points and are 10.5-point favorites. That gives us a positive game script for him.
Yeah, generally just like from a zoom all the way out, right? Like a heavy favorite at home, you want the running back, right? Because he's going to ice the game away. It does seem like he's commanding more and more of that rush share. We can definitely check that out. Shout out to Rob, by the way. He put a lot of stats together for me, so I can sound just as smart as him. But I do think that Miles Sanders is a great play this week, simply from the standpoint that they should be running the ball to kind of ice the game against my beloved Steelers, who just aren't on the same level as the Eagles. But I will say the Eagles might sleepwalk and not show up to this game. I do like we'll get to it later, but I do really, really like AJ Brown this week. So just in general, like I think we should be in on the Eagles offense. And I think Miles Sanders at low ownership is a really, really solid play for sure. Some other ones that I kind of like is Dalvin Cook. I know he's kind of a scary play just because his shoulder could pop out at any time, but he projects similarly to Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. He's a nice little pivot off of them at about 4% owned. And they are playing against we already said who they're playing against. I cannot remember that.
Arizona.
Arizona, there we go. Who again is a pretty not a stout defense at all. So I like Dalvin Cook as kind of a little bit of a weird pivot. And then another one that kind of draws my attention is DeAndre Swift's back. He's off the injury report. People are going to fade him just because of the uncertainty with the injury. Some people like to see it a week before they commit. I'm down. You know what I mean? In a high scoring game, there are some low owned pieces in this really high scoring game that I want exposure to, and DeAndre Swift is certainly one of them. Are there any other low owned plays that you like at running back before we move on to wide receiver?
Yeah, I think Michael Carter warrants consideration this week. Brees Hall went down last week, unfortunately. They did trade for James Robinson. I'm kind of under the impression that maybe he's not going to get a huge snap count share this week since he's getting adjusted to a new offense. Michael Carter is pretty solid back. We saw him have a couple big games last year. The Patriots have been fairly stout against the run, but this defense they looked tired last week. Playing who the heck did they play? Playing the Bears last week, and the Bears were running the ball pretty effectively against them. So I think at under 3% owned and only 5,900, I think Michael Carter could be kind of a decent contrarian play. But outside of him, I don't think so. I think we covered.
Yeah, I like Michael Carter too. He's a good running back. I mean, Brees Hall was just explosive and was taking over that backfield before he got hurt. Hopefully, he makes a full recovery. But Michael Carter can certainly get the job done. He was a second round pick, so I mean, he has the pedigree. He has the pass catching ability. The Jets always worry me, but like you said, I think Michael Carter is a really really good play, especially if no one's going to be on him. So moving on to wide receiver. Let me get the old banner here. Boom, getting better at this. My favorite play on the week, just ignoring ownership, ignoring how popular they're going to be, is Chris Olave. It's just a beast. I mean, he can win all over the field. The Las Vegas Raiders, I've already touched on this, are allowing a lot of pass yards per attempt. They're allowing a lot of air yards. They're a pass funnel. They don't have a very strong pass defense, and Olave should get there. Let's group all the rookies together. I'm getting Olave, Garrett Wilson, and then this one really is going to bother some people, but it's Drake London. I think that last week's game with Arthur Smith has kind of been a viral talking point with him having a negative 20% pass rate over expectation. They just decided to play 1920s football and not throwing it to these weapons, Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I think what's being lost there is that they didn't really have the ball at all during that game. And that is kind of skewing the numbers a little bit. I think that against a Carolina team where if they win, they will be at the top of the division. I think they're going to come out. They're going to be competitive. I think they're going to be able to move the ball. And I think it's going to flow through Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Like I'm not ready to put them in the casket yet. I know a lot of people have wrote them off. But I think this is a week where Drake London and Kyle Pitts could get there. Maybe not both of them, but one of them. So any of those rookies pop out to you? Are we excited about any of them or do I need to get the hell out of here?
Yeah, I love Chris Olave this week. Especially it doesn't sound like Michael Thomas is playing, but even if he was, and even if Jarvis Landry were playing, this guy's the best wide receiver on that team. Like you said, he is just a beast. The Raiders have been getting lit up by wide receivers and the passing game in general this year. And this is a game that we talked about earlier, and we talked about Andy Dalton earlier. And if you have any interest in Andy Dalton, he's not getting there without Chris Olave getting there. And Chris Olave is only $6,000. He has 2 touchdown, 120-yard upside potential for this game. He is going to be pretty popular at around 12% owned, but he is definitely someone you cannot ignore. As for Drake London, that is a well that I'm not going back to, just for all the reasons you just described. I mean, how many pass attempts per game do the Falcons have? I think it's under 20.
Yeah, right around 18.
Yeah, okay. And with Marcus Mariota throwing the ball, chances are there isn't going to be a ton of efficiency with those throws. I mean, I guess they're playing against a pretty crappy Carolina defense, a team that's in rebuilding mode. But that kind of tells me that this is going to be a game where they're going to be able to stick to their game plan and just be able to run the ball. So I really have no interest in Drake London or Kyle Pitts this week. But I will mention that on the other side of that game, I do kind of like DJ Moore this week, even with PJ Walker taking the snaps. We saw DJ Moore have a little bit of a resurgence last week. Um, the Falcons' defense has not been stellar against wide receivers this year. So who knows? Maybe DJ Moore just needed a little bit of a change up at quarterback to start getting looks his way. I like him to continue his bounce back this week against the
Yeah.
Falcons. And he's great value at only 5,300.
Not only that, but I mean, his two biggest offensive target competition were shipped out. So Christian McCaffrey is now with San Francisco, and Robbie Anderson's with the Cardinals. They're essentially tanking without tanking. And DJ Moore is going to be the focal point of their offense. He's young. He had a little bit of a squeaky wheel. PJ Walker will get him the ball. So yeah, I really like the DJ Moore call for sure. To go back to Drake London, if I could sway you, I know it's a big piece of a small pie, but it's still a big piece. It's 30% target share, 30% air yard share, really high target value. They're targeting him in the red zone. And I just think that I'm going to follow the volume. If this game somehow does shoot out, I do think that Drake London can get there. And there were some early games early in the season where they were competitive and Drake London had a few big games. Kyle Pitts hasn't really had that big game yet, but I really like Drake London this week. That's going to be, maybe that'd be my full send play at the end, just to get the people going. But yeah, I mentioned Garrett Wilson. How do you feel about him this week?
He's just been so disappointing the last few weeks. He had a couple great games at the beginning of the season, and we've seen his salary come way down to 4,200. He just hasn't seemed to be been clicking since Zach Wilson got back. The over-under in this game is only 41 points. The Patriots defense has been good at times. They were not good last week, of course. He is a great value play at 4,200, and I mean, he's getting good volume as well. He's got 9 adjusted targets per game, so he's getting targeted in the red zone as well. But I think I'm probably going to try and find some other value plays at wide receiver this week. Again, I like the idea of spending down for a guy like Sam Ellinger, so that I can keep all my wide receivers above 5K. So I'm probably going to fade Garrett Wilson this week against the Pats.
Yeah, I will say, like, one thing that puts me on Garrett Wilson a little bit more is that Corey Davis has been rolled out. So that's one less target competition for him. Elijah Moore will play. I mean, he's not injured. He just sat out because he kind of started pouting about not getting the ball. I love diva wide receivers, don't get me wrong, but Garrett Wilson is probably going to command a little bit more of a target share than Elijah Moore, even in a game without Corey Davis. I like both this week as tournament plays. The only thing that gives me pause is that it's the Jets, and it's Zach Wilson. Give me Joe Flacco in there, and then like all systems go. But yeah, Garrett Wilson's awesome. All the underlying metrics are good for him. Target share, air yard share, all above average. 22% target share, 20% air yard share, high target value. Like, he's getting targeted in the end zone. And we've seen him have a spike game. So I think we might see another one here, especially against your beloved Patriots, who kind of got lit up a little bit by the Bears, but we won't talk about that. Not on your podcast. Tell me about DeAndre Hopkins. Is he back, or is he just back?
I don't know, man. He looked like he was all the way back last week. I mean, he was just getting open. What did he get? Was his target share last week? I think it was close to like 50%. I don't think the Cardinals.
Yeah, it was absurd. He had, I'm not sure how many targets he had, but it was a lot.
I think he was 10 for 105 or something.
Yeah, he had 14 targets, 10 receptions, 46% target share, 16% air yard share. These are absurd numbers. So
yeah,
DeAndre.
You could tell Kyler Murray was looking to go back his way to get him back in the mix. And again, I think this game has shootout potential. And if it does, there's no way DeAndre Hopkins is not going to be a part of the points that are scored. And he's only 7,400, so I like him a lot this week. He's probably one of my favorite wide receivers above 7,000 to pay up for.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned his salary. That does seem like right in line with where Draftkings salary algorithm's awesome, apparently. But I do think that his salary is on the way up, especially these players that come back after a suspension or an injury, or rookies. Like we want to capitalize on salary inefficiencies, and I think this might be one in a game that could shoot out. He's not going to be that popular, I don't think, especially because there's so many other options that people want to get on. Ownership in general this week is pretty flat. A lot of people are on DJ Moore and Tyreek Hill, but otherwise, like Chris Olave is going to be popular. Justin Jefferson is going to be popular. CeeDee Lamb will be popular, but it's pretty flat otherwise. I'm seeing Tyler Lockett here as well. Just note that DK Metcalf, this is like a Seahawks thing. They're like acting like he could still play on Sunday, but I'm pretty sure he's going to miss at least a couple of weeks. Not going on IR. Tyler Lockett is also questionable. Didn't practice today. That's just a recent report. So just keep an eye on that. But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is an awesome play that's not going to be that highly owned. Again, this is someone who pops up into the player pool every single week for me. Playing Tennessee, which is not a defense we're scared of, is Brandon Cooks. We talk about Brandon Cooks every single week, so I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on him. He's awesome. He's always underpriced. He's always underowned, and he'll get there. He might not have the ceiling, but he's got a pretty solid floor. How do you feel about Brandon Cooks this week?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who's going to project well pretty much every week because he's going to have such a high share of the targets and the receptions and the receiving yards and just the passing game in general. Yeah, and he's still got the talent. We've seen it. He's getting 7 to 8 targets per game, so that's pretty solid volume for a guy who's only at 5,900. Tennessee has been pretty weak against the pass this year. They're averaging 200 receiving yards allowed to wide receivers per game this year, and they're allowing 1.5 touchdowns per game to wide receivers this year as well. So, yeah, I mean, I like Brandon Cooks this week at 5,900. It's a great volume play, so I can't argue with that one at all.
Yeah, and another guy that people aren't going to want to play this week, but is projecting really well is Robert Woods in that same game. So if you like a little contrarian mini stack, little Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, throw it back to about 2 or 3 years ago when both were just really smashing in every single game. It seemed like Robert Woods is averaging right around 5 targets a game. He's not going to cost a whole lot in terms of salary. Has a 22% target share, 24% air yard share. I mean, they're going to be able to move the ball against Houston. The only thing that would give me pause is that we might see Malik Willis on Sunday. And that's something we didn't talk about when we talked about quarterback. He could be an awesome pivot off of Ellinger because he's basically a running back. I don't know that he can throw the ball like at all, but Robert Woods is interesting, especially if Malik Willis is in there and you want to do a little bit of a weird stack. Are you getting any interest in Robert Woods? And do you want to talk a little bit about Malik Willis? That might be a late kind of thing that we get on to get contrarian.
So admittedly, I didn't even know Malik Willis was potentially going to play this week. I think I only saw him play in one game this year, and when the Bills were blowing out Tennessee. I think that sounds right. Yeah, he showed some flashes, especially being able to run the ball. So, if he does end up starting, that could be a nice pivot contrarian play off of Sam Ellinger. If you're planning to pay that far down at quarterback, Robert Woods, he's been projecting well every week for me, and he has not really delivered. So, I'm not going to keep going back to that well. I think he's probably someone I'm going to avoid since there's other cheaper guys down in that range who I like a lot better this week. One being Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants, going up against a poor Seattle defense. This Giants team's been clicking a little. I mean, they haven't had the most electric offense in the league, but it sounds like from all indications that Wan'Dale is going to be or is expected to be the number one guy in that wide receiver core. So. At 4,700, I like taking a chance on him to see what he can do, so far in his young career. But he's someone I would rather go to than Robert Woods this week.
Yeah, I like Wan'Dale a lot this week as well. He's gonna be one of those like target hogs, especially low ADOT. Like they like to get him in space, and he seems to be probably their best receiving weapon, especially with Kadarius Toney, who hasn't played, is now in Kansas City. This season's been a lot of fun in regards to trades and unfortunately injuries opening up other opportunities for players, but that's not as fun, but it is interesting. So let's get off of some of these gross plays. Actually, I have one more for you. If you're going to play that Eagles game, Deontay Johnson is actually coming up for me, which really bothers me because my boy is George Pickens. He'll be the popular play in that game if they want to run it back on a Eagle stack or something. But Deontay Johnson is still projecting really well because he's getting a lot of targets. He's still the wide receiver one. Maybe not in terms of hype, but in terms of target share, air yard share, all that, he's still the wide receiver one. And he could have a big game here in a game where the Steelers should be throwing a lot to keep up with this awesome Eagles defense. I won't make you talk about Deontay Johnson if you don't want to. We can just move on to Justin Jefferson. But any comments on Deontay Johnson or the Steelers receivers in general?
I mean, Deontay Johnson, this is another guy that he's just been projecting well on a week-to-week basis. He has one of the lowest fantasy points over expected in the league. He's underperforming by 6 fantasy points per game with respect to where he should be based on his target volume and his air yards volume. And that's a metric. When you see guys get that low and the points over expected, that means they're due. But man, he is so far down that it's just like his quarterback play is just so bad that it's just all those targets and those air yards are never going to accumulate to anything.
It either means they're due or something's wrong. Like Kenny Pickett is probably wrong. Deontay Johnson, I really think I do think he hasn't been playing well. Like he's been dropping. I'm like a defender of people that drops. There's a lot of variance in drops. It really it's not sticky year over year, but he does seem to have a little bit of an issue this year with catching the ball, and he had a little bit of an issue last year as well with that. But let's not talk about Deontay Johnson anymore because it's going to make me sad. Justin Jefferson against Arizona. I mean, if people aren't going to people should be forcing him in because he's just going to go nuclear against Arizona. This game, I think, is going to shoot out. Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson's probably my favorites, just single stack on the week. I would imagine he's showing up for you as well. You got anything for the people about Justin Jefferson?
I mean, yeah, I right on board with you, Nick. I love Justin Jefferson this week. And at 9,100, his ownership is not through the roof. I have him under 10% owned because people might not want to pay up for him, especially when there are some pretty good options at wide receiver this week. I love the idea of just plugging in Sam Ehlinger at 4,000 and then paying up for Justin Jefferson at 9,100 and still having plenty of salary left over to get some great running back and other wide receiver plays. That's probably how I'd approach this week. But yeah, I feel like this is going to be a big Justin Jefferson game. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate in the game with a really high over under and against the Cardinals, who again have not been great against the pass game and receivers this year. I mean, he's just a monster in every single metric. He's averaging like 42% of the receiving yards in receiving yard share for the top 4 wide receivers on that Vikings team. The Cardinals are giving up a lot of yards after the catch, and that's where Justin Jefferson can really burn you. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stats to back up playing him this week and paying up at 9,100.
Yeah, definitely. The Arizona's they're giving up a lot of yak. They're giving up a lot of air yards. They're just not a good defense. And Justin Jefferson can get there even against some of the best defenses in the league. He's a good play. Like I really like. He's one where like if you fade him at that ownership, like he can absolutely bury you. I don't know, but the thing about him is some of these other wide receivers, like even DeAndre Hopkins at this stage in his career might have that 30, 35, even 40-point game in his range of outcomes. It's unlikely. Garrett Wilson, we haven't seen it from him yet. Chris Olave, not quite. But Justin Jefferson, we know he has that in his range of outcomes. And another wide receiver that I think has that in his range of outcomes, but you haven't quite seen it yet, and this could be the week against a terrible Steelers secondary, is A.J. Brown. He's probably like I said, my favorite overall play at wide receiver because he's going to be low owned because it's hard to get up to him. And I just think he can run all over that secondary. Wouldn't be afraid to play Devontae Smith either. I think they both have really high ceilings this week. So don't be afraid to play the Eagles wide receivers, especially if they're not going to be popular. Anybody else you want to mention before we move on? We are running a little bit late here.
Let's see. Do we? Yeah, I think if he plays, I got some interest in Amon-Ra St. Brown this week at 6,900 as a run back in that game. It's highest over under in the slate for a reason, and the Lions probably aren't going to get there in terms of their projected score without Amon-Ra St. Brown going off. So I think he's someone who commands attention this week as well. But he is looking pretty high owned at 18%. And if he's still got some lingering issues there with that injury, he's someone you would hate to play and have him go out of the game early. But he is on my radar this week as well. And of course, the obvious Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle plays. I don't know if we talked about them, but just pretty much all the offensive pieces of that game should be in play this week.
Yeah, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown won't be quite as high owned as 18%, just purely due to the fact that he's coming off an injury that typically will bring the ownership percentage down, and the ownership models won't really see that. And like I said, like I think he'll be fine, mostly because it was a concussion, and I think it was like a borderline concussion. He might have even cleared protocol like the next day. And they're just being extra cautious with the rules this year. So I really like the Amon-Ra St. Brown play because, again, that's a player that has that crazy 30-point game in their range of outcomes. So let's move on to everyone's favorite position, tight end. What a disaster. Who you got for us? Let's maybe get through this a little bit quicker. Who's some of your favorite plays at tight end this week?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's not really a great week for tight end. It's probably a week that I'm probably just trying to spend down. There's some pretty decent options under 4,000 this week. So some guys I've been looking at. Let's see, like Dalton Schultz is someone I kind of like this week. He was getting a high target share at the beginning of the season before he had that injury. I think at 3,700, that's a little bit of a misprice for him. So he's someone that I could be looking at who doesn't have a tremendous amount of ownership this week. But if I am going to pay up, I mean, I think kind of really the only viable option is George Kittle. I mean, he's 5,700. We finally saw Jimmy G start to go to him a little bit more last week against the Chiefs when they were forced in a position to do so. So I think those are two pretty decent plays this week. I also like Pat Freiermuth against Philadelphia. Even though that defense has been stout, I mean, it seems like Pat Freiermuth has been kind of the guy in the receiving core there. He's been getting a lot of looks, a lot of targets. He's got a 20% target share through the season, which is, right up there towards the top of the league for tight ends, at least for the tight ends on the slate this week. And then, you got guys like Juwan Johnson who are down at 3,200. We saw him get a couple of red zone looks last week. In a high scoring game against the Raiders, I think he should be in play as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to play Noah Fant this week because DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett could both miss. I'm fine with fading that. He's not showing up in my player pool because he doesn't project all that well, even if those two go out. We may see that change if it turns out that both players are out. So it's just a gross play because I maybe play Will Dissly. I mean, I think he might be the one. Noah Fant has not played well this year. Maybe he's been coming on a little bit as of late, but the other plays is I'm with you on Pat Freiermuth and Dallas Goedert in that same game. Both tight ends project well. Like I said, I think the Eagles are going to be able to move the ball against the Steelers defense at home. And I think that on the way back, they're going to be playing catch up. So should be a good offensive environment for Pat Freiermuth and Dallas Goedert. Tyler Higbee is actually the top exposure player for me in the player pool, just because he's getting an absurd target share for a tight end and his price isn't really moving up. He's going to be popular just because he's an easy plug and play, and we can kind of ignore tight end if you just play Tyler Higbee, it seems like this year. Some other plays, I really, really like TJ Hawkinson this week. Like, again, just get pieces of this Miami-Detroit game. And then on the other side, Mike Gesicki pops up in the player pool as well. Are you seeing either Gesicki or Hawkinson? I believe it's Gesicki Gesicki or Hawkinson.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like T.J. Hawkinson this week. Not as big as a fan of Mike Gesicki. Um, he gets okay volume, but it seems like he's not getting like big air yards or yards after the catch. I don't think his upside is really there. But yeah, I love T.J. Hawkinson this week. And I got to throw it there for you because earlier you had mentioned Drake London. If you're willing to go to Drake London, are you willing to go to Kyle Pitts at 4,000 this week?
Absolutely. He's in the player pool. Not a heavy exposure, about 5%, which means that he's kind of sneaking in there. But it's gonna happen, man. I mean, Mike Ditka is the only other receiver to have 1,000 yards in his rookie season as a tight end. He went as early as we've ever seen. Arthur Smith is probably hearing from people like, at the end of the day, just get your playmakers the ball. Like Kyle Pitts is a playmaker. I think this like bet on talent. You bet on talent, you have outs. We know Kyle Pitts is talented. It's no fault of his. So I'm going back to the well, Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Maybe that's why I keep losing all this money, but I really do like Kyle Pitts this week against Carolina, who just it's a bad team. It's a bad team. And I think that I think that he can get there for sure.
Yeah, I think I would go there before I'd go to Drake London. Given how low his price is. So, um, and what about Zach Ertz? We got any interest in him this week? I kind of like him in that game too. I mean, he continues to see a very high target share with this Cardinals team. Especially Marquise Brown is out now. Of course, we do have D Hop back, but of course, the wide receivers, no matter who it is going to soak up some of the targets. But he's averaging about 11 value adjusted targets per game, so he's getting the targets in the red zone as well. So I mean, I think at 5,100, I don't think it'll be too hard for Zach Ertz to return his value in this game.
Yeah, he's got a great target share. He just isn't really the player that he was, so you're not going to get a whole lot of yak out of him. I do think him and Tyler Higbee are very similar plays. So Tyler Higbee is going to be really popular. Zach Ertz less so. I think Ertz is a pretty solid pivot off of Tyler Higbee because, like I said, they're similar players in my mind in terms of their projection. They're literally projected a hundredth of a point away from each other, and Zach Ertz is going to come in at about a third of the ownership. So pretty sharp call there. Definitely going to have interest in him this week in a game that we really like with Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins, not Kyler Murray because COD came out, but yeah, you have any off the wall plays for the people other than maybe Zach Ertz?
So it's just kind of an interesting stat here. When we talk about points over expected for receivers, again, that's how many. Well, expected points is how many fantasy points should they have based on their target volume and their air yard share, and then points over expected is how are they doing relative to what's expected. As a defense, the Arizona Cardinals are allowing tight ends to score 6 points above what they're expected to score on average per game. That's just something I just saw just now, kind of looking at the stat spreadsheet here that I thought was interesting. And Irv Smith at 3,500, we've seen him pay off a couple times this year. And the Cardinals, I mean, have been fairly weak against tight ends this year.
For years, not just this year. We've been targeting them since like I was still in college, like 2013.
Yeah, I mean, look what Juwan Johnson did last week. So I think because of that, I might have Irv Smith on the radar. He could be kind of a flyer, if you will. And I guess too, Las Vegas is also at the bottom of the league in that metric, and Juwan Johnson is projected to be lower owned than Irv Smith. So if you wanted to go that route on these teams who are allowing tight ends to perform over expectation, then Juwan Johnson and Irv Smith are in play.
Yeah, I like both those calls for sure, especially just because tight end is such a wasteland. I think it's a good idea to punt the position, and those are ways to do that intelligently. I mean, we're not going to come out here and play Cole Kmet anytime soon, and I say that, and he'll probably go off. But all right, defense. At a glance, Washington is projecting really well. The optimizer seems to really like them. And that's specifically because they're facing Sam Ehlinger, rookie quarterback that we haven't seen before. So we're excited about him, but at the end of the day, the defense is projecting well. Los Angeles against San Francisco, against Jimmy Garoppolo. they're probably projecting well because typically the second game in division is a little bit lower scoring. And then on the flip side, you have San Francisco's projecting really well against an LA team that's been struggling. So those are my top three defenses that I'll probably be playing. I'm not sure how popular each one of them will be. It's kind of hard for me to kind of predict defensive ownership, but I typically try to fade the chalky defenses, which it looks like that will be the Commanders will be the chalkiest defense on the week. So we'll see kind of how what I do with that as we approach Sunday. But what defenses are popping out to you this week? I know I've been saying that a lot. What's popping out to you, Rob?
So probably one of my favorite, I actually mentioned it earlier, is the 49ers. I feel like at 3,100, they're underpriced. It might be just because they're going up against the Super Bowl champs. But yeah, that offensive line for the Rams has just been horrid, and the Rams have been surrendering a lot of points to defenses this year. So they're one of my favorite plays at 3,100. Washington, like you mentioned too, is right at the top of my list. And I don't think we can ignore the Patriots at 3,000 against the Jets. They're projecting really well as well. And I wouldn't even mind punting, down to some of these teams, maybe like Houston's at 2,600 against Tennessee. Especially if Willis plays, then you got a situation where you got a rookie quarterback. Rookie quarterbacks tend to make mistakes, or maybe even paying up for teams like Philadelphia this week. If your budget allows, but I think I would probably roll with San Francisco as probably my top option this week. Fairly affordable.
Yeah, I like that call too. Another defense that's showing up a lot for me is the New York Jets against whatever's going to go on at the quarterback situation against your beloved New England Patriots. I did see that Mac Jones has some numbness in his toes from that ankle injury, which means that might be a little bit of a setback. So we might see Bailey Zappi, who, again, I don't know if we should be targeting him, but again, he falls in that bucket of a rookie quarterback that might be someone we want to target. So the Jets kind of pop up to me. They project well, low owned. Seems like a good, intelligent way to be a little bit different at the position. So I'll be on the Jets for sure. Unfortunately for you, but hopefully I'm wrong about that for your sake. But yeah, and Houston also is showing up for me. They're going to be really popular. Actually, it depends on when we get that Malik Willis news. If it comes Sunday where Tannehill's a game time decision, he is questionable right now. If we don't find out until Sunday that Malik Willis is getting the start, I don't know that people will gravitate towards Houston quickly enough, but they could. Just like they're not going to gravitate towards Malik Willis quick enough. But yeah, those are both interesting spots for me that I'll be monitoring for sure. But any other comments on defense? Yeah, we got our gridiron zone. Andy can't bring himself to play the Jets D. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, brother. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, defense it's just such a dart throw every single week. I mean, generally just punt, pay down, and hope you get lucky. I mean, that's kind of what the defense position does to DFS. Kind of gives everybody a chance.
Yeah, I actually have been really happy with the way the player pool has been landing on the defenses that have ended up playing well. That's probably more luck than anything, but one of the things that the player pool does is it puts us on some less owned options that are projecting well, and the field's not really on them. So that does seem to be a bit of a place for some leverage defense. So like I said, because everyone's just like, it's so random. Why don't even care about it? Just play the best plays, But we don't know what the best plays at defense are all the time. And Andy, it might be the Jets this week. So we'll report back next week for sure. All right, full send. Rob, you ready to tell the people what you're going all in on this week?
Yes. I'm going full send on Sam Ehlinger. I can't ignore the 4,000 price. I'm willing to take the risk. And I just love the idea of being able to pay up for a bunch of other toys. So coming into the week, I'll tell you that I was probably going to go full send on Tua, Waddle, Tyreek Hill stacks. Now I'm basically just swapping out Tua for Sam Ehlinger. So it's going to be Sam Ehlinger and some combination of Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. So Sam Ehlinger and Miami stacks this week.
Yeah, I think I'm really into Kirk Cousins double stacks this week. This will be my full send stack. I like some combination of Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and then I'll probably rotate through a couple of lineups in these tournaments that I'm playing in, with one with Irv Smith and one with Adam Thielen. Play a little bit of the narrative game there with the Adam Thielen touchdown record on the horizon. And then another player that I really like is AJ Brown this week. So not connected to that game at all, but I do think I'm going to force him a little bit, make sure I get a little bit more exposure to him. And he's not really going to be all that popular. So I really like AJ Brown. I'm going to be at the game too, so that's always fun. And you know what? If they're going to stomp the Steelers, hopefully I can benefit from it. So yeah, I really like AJ Brown this week. So yeah, what can go wrong with Sam Ellinger and Kirk Cousins? We're really giving the people some exciting plays here. You have anything else for the people before we get out of here?
No, man. Good luck. I mean, make a choice, stick with it, and win some money.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we'll definitely talk about this standard deviation situation I'm going with. If I can, I eventually I would like to make a little bit of a Twitter thread for everybody. So make sure you check the Gridiron AI Twitter feed. That's at Gridiron AI on Twitter. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get it out this week. I'll be on a plane flying to Philadelphia Sunday morning. So I'm hoping that I can maybe pick some of these uncertain spots and give some people some clarity. That's what the Twitter thread will be for. The player pool will be posted tomorrow on Instagram, again, at gridiron.ai on Instagram. And this will be on the YouTube channel. You'll be able to review this over the weekend as you're building your lineups. That's youtube.com/gridironai. You can find Rob at RobMeg4591. I'm Nick for Rob. Thanks, everybody. Good luck out there this week. Go get them. Have a good one.